Heard on Thursdays with Nikki is about to go live online. Catch HOT, the iconic radio show that made Philippine FM radio talk, every Thursday on the Monster.
Streaming video on the Monster Facebook page at RX931, the Monster YouTube channel at RX931, and twitch.tv/Monster RX931.
You heard on Thursday's host, Nikki Porter. Stand by and enjoy the program.
Good evening, monsters. I'm Nikki Porter, your host for the show that made Philippine FM radio talk. That's heard on Thursdays on the Monster. Now, in case you guys haven't realized, today, is the final Thursday of June, which means we're about 5 days away from the midpoint of the year. No joke. Nearly half of the year is over, but I'm not here to ask what you've accomplished so far in 2024, because you know what, maybe you're already under some pressure to get things done. We've all got our own stuff going on, right? So tonight, what we're going to do is this. We're raising our glass to everything that's happened in the last 188 days and to everything that will happen in the remaining 188 days of 2024. And who better to raise those glasses with than with someone who's a wine savant and who has an expert pour. So my guest this evening is no stranger to the show. I've invited him a couple times in the past to educate us on wines, pairing them with food, Filipino food, and, you know, what the journey is like to become a professional sommelier. Last year, we paired Filipino food with new and old world wines live on radio and streaming platforms. So that was a lot of fun. But also, of course, more importantly, there was a lot to learn from as well. On a personal note, he's also one of my batchmates from college who truly blazed his own path. He's worked hard to get to where he is now, and with the determination and the passion that he has to be as knowledgeable as possible on wines and spirits. He is a certified sommelier from the Court of Master Sommeliers, the 2019 champion in the Philippine Sommelier Competition, and the Philippine representative in the ASI World's Best Sommelier Competition in 2023. Ladies and gents, let's welcome back to Heard on Thursday, certified sommelier and champion, Ian Santos! Yay!
Hello. Hello, good evening.
Gusto mo ba siyang medyo umatras sa onte?
Yeah.
Well, anyway, so happy to have you back on the show, Ian. So we'll start things off very easily. And for all those who are listening on radio, Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, we are going to be doing some wine tasting this evening as well. So very excited for that because I just want to learn. That's why I just want to learn. I want to educate myself also since Ian is here. So let's start things off very simply. As it is near the midpoint, like I mentioned earlier, is there anything that's significant, Ian, in your life that's happened that you're comfortable to share at least?
Absolutely. So, well, not a lot actually. I did the competition in 2023, which was, I think, one of the best experiences I've had.
Yeah.
Competed with 80 different sommeliers from all over the world. The most difficult competition I've ever done. Very challenging, definitely, but definitely an eye opener as well. I mean, I got to travel around the world, got to travel to Paris to compete, did a bit of a tour in Champagne as well during the competition.
Yeah.
But most importantly, I got to meet the sommeliers in the international scene. I think that was really one of the most memorable parts.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Okay. So that's what I want to talk about first, actually. So you represented the Philippines in the competition in France, the world's best sommelier competition. First of all, that title alone for a competition, it can be intimidating.
Yeah.
It's like world's best. And even more so, you were a representative. So how was that experience like for you? Like to represent the Philippines in that stage?
Absolutely. So there was a lot of pressure, definitely. I mean, Philippines is not a very well-known country for a wine as a wine drinking country, or at least when it comes to beverage or alcohol consumption. So there was still a lot of pressure because it's you're representing the whole F&B industry. You're representing everyone in the beverage industry in the Philippines. So it was quite a challenge, definitely at that point.
Yeah. So was it like was it just were you just invited to become their representative, or did it go through like a shortlisting
Yeah,
process?
so I did the Philippine Sommelier competition in 2019,
Yeah.
won that competition. So
Hmm.
automatically, since there was no competition during
During the
and before
pandemic,
or after the
yeah.
pandemic,
Yeah.
I had to represent the Philippines, which was
Oh,
good because I
okay.
didn't have to compete with anybody. But normally, this competition happens every 3 years.
Oh, wow. So
So
timely.
very very timely, and also with other countries where they have a champion for every year,
Hmm.
those past three winners would have to compete with each other to know who would actually represent that country for the world's best, because it
Okay.
only happens every 3 years. So it's like
Right.
Olympics also.
Mm-hmm.
So in my case, I was the last one to win the competition. So I
Yeah.
did represent the country since then.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it was. I'm sure you mentioned there were 80 international sommeliers who were with you also in that competition. So, what was the energy like? First of all, being in that same room, not just stage wise, but then, like when you're off the stage or when you're off, like wherever it is that you're doing your challenge or whatever round or whatever it is that make you do, which we'll get to eventually. What was the energy like to be surrounded by these like-minded
Oh,
individuals?
very intense, definitely. Because everybody there went there to win the competition. They want to be the world's best sommelier. I mean, I
Mm-hmm.
did too, also, of
Mm-hmm.
course. So I did gain a few friends. I did meet some people who were there to just compete. So, but which
Ah,
he totally understand also.
yeah.
But there's so much pressure, especially in those countries that are wine producing countries who are representing
Yeah.
big countries like France, Italy, Spain, US. Those countries, they had a lot of pressure on them for sure. But they've had a good exposure on wines and different beverages as well.
True.
They
True.
get to travel a lot because they hold some of these passports that are very powerful as well. So
Yes.
they get to be
That's
exposed
very
to,
helpful.
which is very helpful in the wine industry also.
Mm.
So you don't have to be rich to become a sommelier, but at least yeah, that whole knowledge. That's why I studied wine,
Hmm.
to like, travel without leaving, you know, the country.
Through the palate.
Exactly.
I love that. So you're telling me the world's best sommelier competition is kind of like the Olympics of the wine
Yeah,
world. That's
absolutely.
amazing, and you got to represent them. That's the one.
Yeah,
You consider like an Olympic athlete.
kind of. I mean, it was in Paris, diba? And the Olympics this year is in
Exactly.
Paris. So I'm like, I was there.
Yeah, that's amazing. And so okay, when you started, like when the competition started, could you walk us through like what was asked of you to do? So for example, like first round,
Mhm.
like what did you do? And then what happened after that? What was the criteria for you to pass so that you can be not eliminated?
Right. So we had to go through a series of examinations, right? Unfortunately, I didn't get to the preliminary round, but I
Okay.
did go through the first round of exams. It started in the morning. It was a whole day exam. We had to
Wow.
do a theory exam, a written test.
Huh?
I remember there was about 400 to 500 questions on that exam alone. We had to do it for about an hour and a half. Lots of questions from about wines from all over the world, non-wine questions as well. Lots of questions about beers from different countries,
Oh, okay.
cocktails, sake, any beverage you could actually think
Mm-hmm.
of, even up to cigar and olive oil. So some questions like that.
Wow.
Um, and then we had to do a blind tasting after.
Mm-hmm.
We went through four different red wines, which we had to identify and describe each
Yeah.
of it. And then in the afternoon, we had to do a service competition. So that's where you have the master sommeliers,
Mm-hmm.
the past winners as well, who would actually judge on your way of service.
Mm-hmm.
So it would start off with them telling you the instructions. Um, they would need, let's say, like a bottle of red wine from Bordeaux. They would mention certain details that you have to remember and be familiar with, of course.
Uh-huh.
And then you have to get the bottle from the fridge. You have to prepare the whole thing, and then they'll give you like a certain time period for it. So it was quite intense. Actually, it was a very intense day for me to
Wow.
do that competition. But I definitely learned a lot for sure.
That's amazing because it's like okay, first of all, like a written test already. This parang licensure exam of sorts. Because you said it was hundreds
Yeah.
of questions,
Yeah.
but I think with what you mentioned, them including beers and olive oil, cigars, and other spirits. Let's say, are you like? Is it suggesting that sommelier doesn't just revolve around wines now?
Absolutely. You have to know
Okay.
every single beverage you could think of in the restaurant setup. Anything that you can serve in the restaurant
Wow.
setup.
Okay.
So at the end of the day, your goal as a sommelier in a restaurant is to be able to represent or at least recommend different beverage selections based on your client's preference. Of course, their budget would come in as
Of
well.
course, yeah.
If they're alcoholic or non-alcoholic drinkers, so you have to cater to these kinds of customers in a restaurant
Wow.
setup.
That's okay. That blew my mind a little bit because it made me realize like okay, so it's not just about wines anymore because when someone says sommelier, it's like wine immediately. But then now you have to be an expert. Does this mean you have to take certifications again in like, for wine? I know there's one for sake, and then
Mm-hmm.
there's also I think there's one more for spirits and stuff. So you have to take that so that you can be a more well-rounded kind of sommelier and probably when you when you compete again in the world's best
Yeah.
sommelier you can fare better in the written exam.
Absolutely. So, you have to go through a few certifications. For sake, you do have the sake certified sommelier exams. I believe the WSET does it as
Mm-hmm,
well in
mm-hmm.
three or four different levels.
Yeah.
For beer experts, you have the Cicerone certification. They're actually called
Okay.
Cicerones for beer
Wow.
experts.
Yeah,
Uh,
that's
Quite
like
interesting.
that's Cicero, right?
Cicerone,
Like
yeah.
was it the Roman, no, Greek or
Yeah.
something? Basta mahilig uminom siguro.
Exactly. It's a beer,
Yeah.
I'd guess. But yeah, I did the certified sommelier exams just last year. I did my introductory 9 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Took me 9 years to get the certified sommelier exam. The goal is to do advanced next year.
Okay.
So let's see what happens.
That's really exciting. And, and now it's good to know that, there's so many opportunities for you to still learn more. And it's like, I don't know, like, do you feel pressure in that sense? And what do you want to, okay, what would you like to also prioritize first? Because you do have the advanced certification that you want to do. And then what spirit or liquor that you would like to focus on next, if ever?
So I'd really love to study more about different beverages. I have to study more about wines as well because it's nonstop studying. Like even
Mm.
because I remember one of my bosses before in one of the hotels I used to work for. He's what in his 50s or 60s, and he never stopped studying because it's a never-ending study for wines.
Yeah.
There's always like another classification coming out from different countries, different regions, new grape varieties coming out as well. So
Gosh.
so many things to consider with wine. But if I were to focus on another beverage, it would definitely be sake.
Mm-mm.
It's something that's been high in demand in Manila recently.
Really? Okay.
I've noticed a lot of people really looking for good sakes around. So that's something I'd love to learn more about.
So could you tell us very briefly, for those who aren't familiar, how is sake made?
Okay, so first, sake is made out of rice.
Okay.
Similar to what you drink or see from Korean stores, where you have that
Yeah.
soju, that Kirin soju, which is
Mm-hmm.
very popular to many. Sake is actually lower in alcohol content. Very similar to wine as well, except you use rice and another ingredient called koji, which is like a bacteria that eats up the sugar, that helps the yeast eats up the sugar
Oh,
and
okay.
convert it into alcohol. So you need four things: rice, yeast, water, and koji. So that's
Okay.
for sake production. It goes through a fermentation process as well. But of course, you have to steam the rice, drain out the water from it. It goes through a
Okay.
whole process. That's why the Japanese have mastered the art of sake making because they're always precise on everything, right? Like
Right.
they're very good with everything.
When it comes to like crafts, like
Exactly.
handicrafts and stuff, like they will also cherish it.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's why they're good at it. But I've really enjoyed sake lately.
Hmm.
I've been tasting a lot of it, not drinking, tasting.
Okay. I won't judge. It's your job.
So- Something that goes well with almost every type of dish also is sake. It
Oh,
has a
okay.
certain taste. There's a certain factor to it, which is not available in grapes or in wine, which is umami,
Ah,
which
I
goes well with
see.
cheese, steak, everything that's savory.
Interesting. Okay, all right. And okay, so sake has what do you call this? So it has umami and it pairs with a lot of savory
Yeah.
foods. Would you say like most? Not all.
I'd say most actually.
Okay.
Unlike with wine, you have to go through certain types. Like if you're having seafood, you can best pair it with whites. I mean, you can go the other way around. You can still pair it with red meats
Yeah.
and white wines. You can go the traditional way, but with sake, it goes well with almost anything actually. So
Okay, all right. Well, we will kick it off then with with a sparkling sake that Ian did bring for us to try,
taste.
to taste. He wanted to emphasize on that. And so this is also my cue for you monsters to remind you to drink moderately as well. So
Absolutely.
when it comes to sake, you just drink it as is. You don't need
Yeah.
to swirl it or anything, right?
You can actually. So what we do is we drink it just like wine. We look
Okay.
at the wine,
Mm-hmm.
see how the color is, if it's fine or unfiltered. Like this one is
Mm-hmm.
unfiltered. It's a bit hazy.
Yeah.
You can go for the smell. You
Okay.
swirl it around and smell it again, and you'll see
Mm.
a big difference. It's very aromatic.
Yeah. It's very.
Um, it gives you a lot of notes actually. Unlike other sakes, this is sparkling. So without swirling, it will give you a lot of
Yeah.
aromas already
It
because you
smells
have the
like lemon. There's
yeah
like some hints of
some
lemon.
citrus is present, some lemon in there.
Yeah.
I do, which is a funny descriptor. You will get some bananas from it
Oh,
also, some
really?
strawberry notes. Definitely some coconut notes. It's almost like coconut water
It
as
looks
well.
like coconut. One might mistake.
When you try it also, you might think it's coconut water or
Okay.
with some alcohol in
But
it
some fizz.
and some fizz also. So yeah, it's something different for everyone, something unique.
Hmm.
But definitely something you'll see in most Japanese restaurants, especially those that serve steak.
Oh, okay.
So
So you're saying like
interesting
in
stuff.
Japanese restaurants that serve steak here, they will offer this kind of sparkling
Yeah,
sake.
most of them actually. So they will, and it's a good starter. It's a bubbly. It's a good palate opener.
Oh, what does that
It's a
mean? Palate opener.
so when so when you eat, diba, you want your palate to be very like refreshed. You want
Mm-hmm.
to taste everything that you're going to be drinking or
Yeah.
eating. With sparkling wines, it actually cleanses your palate. So when you go for the first dish, everything's clear. You get every flavor that you could get from that certain dish or wine.
Oh, is that
Yeah.
almost analogous to like smelling? I don't know if this is still accurate. Like smelling coffee beans after you smell like perfume.
Yes. Very, very similar
Ah,
concept.
okay, all right. Well, without further ado, we will taste the sake.
Different,
I do get the whole coconut
right?
now. It's like it tastes tropical. It's like I
Yeah.
want to dump a pineapple in there.
Yeah. There's some pineapple notes to it also.
Yeah. Oh my
It's giving you a
goodness.
lot of fruits actually. Although I do get a lot of strawberry notes,
Hmm.
some coconut notes on it. Quite interesting.
It's
Really
like
good texture
anything
also.
with like a juicy kind of fruits.
Yes.
It connects to that smell and also the taste. So
Yeah.
this one can pair with steak.
Yes.
Very interesting. Okay, so what else would you say could pair with it? Like siguro, okay, we can go with Filipino food, I guess,
Mm.
so that it's more common.
So the thing is with this sparkling sa, it's very clean on the palate. It's very
Hmm.
pure. It's very subtle as well.
It's very smooth also.
It's very smooth also. It's not very high in alcohol. It
Right?
gives you that heat at the back of your
Yeah.
throat, but it's still very easy.
Mm-hmm.
I definitely pair this with something simple also, like kinilaw. I think
Oh
that would be
my gosh,
interesting.
that sounds perfect actually.
Something easy to. I mean, think of sushi and sashimi, but with a bit of vinegar in it. I think that would be really nice with this.
Oh my,
Something interesting.
you were making me hungry, Iya. But I can imagine. I can, especially with the kinilaw because they combine it also with some coconut, a little bit of like coconut
Yes.
cream.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Some coconut vinegar or some coconut cream. I think this will be perfect with that. It has
Yum.
enough acidity to go with the acidity of the vinegar as
Hmm.
well, but it should be good with that.
Now I know you mentioned off air that spicy foods don't really go well with alcohol,
Yes.
but what if it's like laing? Because
Oh, it
there's
should be
coconut.
okay.
It should
Yeah,
be
I think
okay.
that that's a really nice pairing with it.
That's
I
why I
think
was
they
thinking.
did
I was like, you know what?
anything that's coconut cream based
I
would
love
be
it.
good with
I
this.
have so many. I have a list because I love coconut
Same.
milk. Ah, okay, amazing. I love this. And so, okay, what are those? I don't know if you know the answer to this, but then there's little granules that I'm seeing floating.
Yeah.
So is that from the
That
rice?
is from the
Because it's
rice.
unfiltered.
Yes.
Oh my god, I'm
So
learning.
so that is from the
So
rice.
kanin siya.
Exactly. Think of diba? Like when you
Yeah.
clean rice, it's the same exact color.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
So that's
That's
how they
true.
produce that as sake. They basically get the
Yeah.
juice or
Mm-hmm.
parang the rice milk,
Mm-hmm.
ferment it. There you go. That's your sake. But
That's
they
amazing.
ferment it and then they make sure that they bottle it at the right time, which ferments continuously and then creating that carbon dioxide inside.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Nerdy stuff, but that's what creates that bubbles. That's what makes it a sparkling wine.
Okay. Well, there you go, monsters. Try some sparkling sake. This one is unfiltered. Looks like a coconut juice, but don't mistake it for coconut juice. And then pair it with laing or
Yeah.
any coconut cream based Filipino
Yes.
food. Amazing. Well, there we. That's the show then. No, we've got one more wine that we're going to cover as well. But before that, let's talk a little bit more about becoming a sommelier. Because, like, how would you describe the community of sommeliers here? Is it a big community or still relatively small?
It started out as a very small community for sure. About when I came back to Manila in 2017, it was very small. I think there was about 20 or 30 members for the Philippine Sommelier
Mm-hmm.
Association. Right now, there's still like official members. It's about the same number, but there's a lot of Filipinos who work abroad that plan to come back to Manila as well. Um, there's a lot of interest happening. The demand for wines and other beverages is going up, and so there are sommeliers who plan to really further their studies and
Mm-hmm.
want to join the community also. But it's
Oh.
definitely growing for the past 4 years since the pandemic. It's been different.
Oh, great! No, that's awesome because it was like I can only hope, of course, that the community is growing slowly, possibly but surely. And so, if someone like, has anyone ever approached you? Maybe it's a tita or a tito, and or like an older woman or man, and you're like, my son or daughter, they want to be a sommelier. Like, have you ever had those kinds of inquiries? Parang, what do we do? What's step
Yeah.
one?
So I've been getting that question actually a lot. But first step I'd say is to really research.
Mm-hmm.
Study wine on your own. There's not a lot of schools that offer wine subjects in Manila.
Mm.
It can get quite expensive as well if you study further. But learning wine, you have so many different sources for it. You have different wine books, you have different websites to go to.
Yeah.
There's so many things to study about, but just focus on one at least. Maybe start studying with the basics. You can research everything online: white wines, red wines, the difference with sparkling wines, where champagne is, where Bordeaux is, and different
Mm.
countries that produce wine. Next step, you can start taking certifications with institutions like the WSET,
Yeah.
which is the Wines and Spirit Education Trust, which is internationally renowned as well. So any establishment in the F&B world will know and recognize that certification if you have it. So
Nice.
that's a good thing about the WSET. And then similar to what I did last month also, you have the Court of Master Sommeliers.
Mm-hmm.
It's an international institution. that's where a lot of sommeliers go through actually to become a certified sommelier,
Mm-hmm.
which is more service driven, more for restaurants.
Got it.
So you have those certifications, you have those options to start with. And then, of course, if you want to learn more, you can start working for wine importers, wine distributors, where you will definitely get to taste so many different wines and learn
Mm,
so many different wines. You have direct contact with the winemakers as well,
right.
which
Connections
is
na yun.
exactly. So it really spreads out from there. So that's one thing to do, and a few of the options also. So
Mm-hmm. And then on the side, considering like it has a lot to do with, I mean, apart from the whole act of like looking at the wine and like knowing the color, the smell, and like testing, I guess your senses. Should they also start kind of experimenting on like smelling the orange? I'm
yeah,
smelling some notes
ab-
of
absolutely. That's how I started also. I would
yeah.
just go to the grocery store, get any type of fruit that I could get. I mean, start with oranges, diba? Apples. You can go even with peaches. I mean, fruits naman that are available in the Philippines, of
May
course.
peaches naman and
Meron
some.
naman. A bit expensive. But
uh
you can go for pineapples also and
yeah.
just try to notice or at least take notes of how it actually smells or tastes like because it's different when you pay attention to it. You
Mm.
fully understand how it is, and when you taste different wines and compare, that's when you'll see the difference. That's where you get to
Ah,
appreciate it more also.
that kind of reminds me of, I don't know what it's called. Is it like conscious eating? No. Basically it's the practice of like really, chewing your food slowly, really
Right.
trying to um like feeling the texture, the flavors that are coming in, the flavors of like of the more that you chew into it or something. I forgot what it's called, but then I feel like it's somewhat similar to that in some
Yeah.
way. Na rin.
Very, very similar.
Mm-mm.
I mean, that's how I started with wine anyway. I would just start appreciating different beverages by
Mm-hmm.
simply breaking down how it actually tastes or smell like, even textures and
Yeah.
all these things. You just start paying attention to the simplest stuff.
Yeah. I feel like, and I don't mean this in a bad way, I feel like sommeliers are kind of like nerds talaga. Because it's like for you to, because you have these questions in
Yeah.
your head, like, okay, like, what does this remind me of? Like, all of those questions that follow up, like, when
Yes.
you try stuff.
Yeah, I think
I,
at the end of the day, it's really just answering your own questions. It's all about
yeah.
curiosity. Na parang you're curious, oh, bakit ganito ang lasa ng beer na to? And then you start learning or start reading
Yeah.
about it. So it really is very like geeky or nerdy. Tama naman, but
Yeah.
you start to appreciate the simplest things in life, which is good, which is what I love about wine and beverages.
Yeah. So what then would you say to someone who is probably not necessarily thinking about not thinking about becoming a sommelier, but then if you were to convince them, like what would the benefits be if they decided, or if you could pitch to them why they should be a sommelier, or go to that path.
Yeah, lots of benefits, definitely. I mean, you get to appreciate every single food or beverage that you get to explore.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the most interesting part is meeting different kinds of people. You
Mm.
definitely meet people in different backgrounds, those who come from the arts, those who come from the business side. I've met a lot of lawyers who have been into wines as well, which I totally understand because when you're working as a lawyer, diba, you want to use your senses as well after your
Yeah.
shift or same with doctors also. I've met a lot of doctors who are have been interested with wine, and that's what makes me fall in love with wine. It's really all about using your senses, which
Mm.
not every profession gets to do.
True. And especially, for example, like someone like me, I grew up in a household, or I have siblings. I have two brothers, not to name drop them, but I have two brothers. And it's like, I learned how to eat fast because of
Yeah.
them. And so I didn't really appreciate the food. I just knew that if you could eat fast, then you can do other stuff. It was kind of just like, it was in some way just a like a hindrance for you to do so that you can enjoy something else. Pero like in terms of wine, what you're saying is that it actually allows you to slow down and
Definitely.
like what you mentioned earlier, like to appreciate what is like literally right in front of you.
Yes. Yeah.
That's amazing. And okay, so I also want to be realistic though in approaching this. Like, what are there some barriers of entry when it comes to becoming a sommelier, or is it fairly easy to get into?
Lots of barriers, definitely. I mean, the fact that Philippines is not really a wine drinking country alone
Mm,
is a big factor. So access to different kinds of wines can be quite challenging.
yeah.
Importing wines to the Philippines is quite challenging in all sorts of ways. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, shipping and everything else, documentations and all that. So access to wine can be quite challenging. Of course, wines are not cheap also. I mean, you can
Yes.
start with good ones. I mean, I can recommend good ones at 400, 500 pesos.
Okay. Okay.
And
Give
they
me
would
that list
definitely,
later.
absolutely. I can recommend a few, but it's you have to spend money for it. That's the
Yes.
thing. But
Yeah.
again, I think we have a good advantage. Google everything.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to learn something about a certain beverage, you can start through that. And like what I did, I didn't come from a rich family that drank wine almost every night
Mm-hmm.
with dinner. I was just curious about it,
Mm-hmm.
started reading about it, and just went on from there. I started asking questions from some of our professors in college, also in
Yeah.
hospitality school.
Mm-hmm.
They told me to start with a few institutions, maybe start with wine importers, join a few classes by some restaurants that hold wine events.
Okay.
That's where you
Okay.
start meeting people and start learning about wines.
Yeah. And
So
so what I'm hearing is like you basically, what do you call this? You, like what I mentioned in the intro. It's like you pretty much blaze your own path. You ask
yeah,
questions, but then it wasn't, a paved road for
yeah,
you. Like you just literally paved it yourself
yes,
and figuring out how you could become a sommelier. That's
yes.
amazing. Like, and also I feel like it takes discipline because if you're gonna be self-taught and if you're gonna be researching, it's like you don't even know where to begin.
Yeah.
So for you, how did you begin? Like when you do research or when you did research in the beginning?
So I just searched for wine books. I mean, a
Ah,
wine
okay.
Bible is one of the best resources
Okay,
out
wine
there.
Bible.
I was never really a fan of reading, but whenever I do encounter a few things, like for example, I see this bottle of sake, I want to learn something about it. I'd go through that book and just
Mm-hmm.
read that certain portion. So I didn't really go through that whole book and study everything all at once. I just went through it slowly. Every time I encounter something or like a new wine, which is one of the best ways to learn. Also,
Mm,
start exploring as well. If you can buy bottles, go for different ones every time you buy a bottle. That's when you get to
right.
explore and really know or learn more about your palate as well. You
Yeah.
see what you like, you see what other people like as well. Especially when you share it with friends.
For
Yeah.
sure. And that's what I try to do as well. I mean, because I do have my favorite varietal, but then it's like I don't want to have to buy the same bottle all the time because I want to try other like because there's old and new world wines that offer the same kind of
Mm.
varietal, and so like I want to explore also as much as I like as much as I want to try the old world, sometimes the old world is more expensive also. So or most of the time, I'm not sure. But yeah, new world wine is actually, impressive na rin eh.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
it's pretty fun.
I think the good thing is compared to 10 years ago, our access has become broader. I mean, I mentioned it's challenging, but again, that's comparing the Philippines to other countries like Hong Kong,
Yes.
Singapore, Japan. But comparing it to 5, 10 years ago, it's much broader now. You have more options actually. There's a
Okay.
lot of importers, especially young ones that bring in the cool stuff right now, which we will be
Mm,
trying later on.
all right.
But you definitely have a lot of options and you have a lot of restaurants opening up. Demand is becoming slightly higher also, which is I think
That's good for you.
yeah, it's good. Definitely.
For sure. Oh, and I feel like I wanted to get back to this. So in the world's best sommelier competition, the person who won, if I'm not mistaken, was not even from one of the popular winemaking regions in
Yes.
Europe. Tama ba?
Yes.
Yeah.
They do produce wine, but not very
But
popular.
no,
Right.
okay, there we go. Not very popular. I want to take a guess because I feel like you told this to me like
Yeah.
last year. As the country start with an L. Is it
Yes.
Latvia?
Yes. That's
I
right.
remember. Yeah, and it's so interesting that you told me that because once again, it's like you wouldn't like it's unexpected
Yeah.
that like someone from Latvia won best sommelier.
Absolutely.
That's amazing. So
Yeah.
that means there's hope also for the
Absolutely,
Philippines.
yeah. And the good thing is, Asian countries have been present, especially in these competitions.
Mm-hmm.
They've been advancing to the finals as well. Like
Yeah.
Hong Kong was in the final three.
Wow.
A lot of Asian countries got into the top 18, which is, I think, really good
That's
because
cool.
Asia has been going up in terms of wine consumption or beverage consumption.
It's amazing. I love that. And so yeah, maybe in a few years we might keep moving up also.
Yeah.
Baka ikaw maging coach.
Yeah,
Coach?
I
Coach
wouldn't
ba?
be surprised if a Filipino wins the competition in the next 3 years because
Mm,
again, one of our best exports is diba, people.
yeah.
So there's a lot of Filipinos working abroad, a lot of Filipinos working in the hospitality abroad, hospitality industry abroad, and so I've met a few. I've been getting messages from a few of them who I know has a good opportunity when it comes to competing and also getting certified with in the sommelier
Mm-hmm.
industry. So I wouldn't be surprised if a Filipino wins in the next
Yeah.
few years.
And again, it's like you don't know how many Filipinos there are who actually
Yeah.
are sommeliers na rin, but
Yeah.
just haven't tried to their shot at like at these
Yeah.
competitions because they just see it as a job. But then
Yeah.
who knows, they might be actually really good
Yes.
at it. So that's pretty awesome. So if you monsters are interested in becoming a sommelier, I guess you're just gonna have to hit up Ian on his Instagram. If you have more questions that I've probably missed as well, that you want to know more about how to go about it. And okay, so before we get to more questions, Ian did mention earlier that there is another one that we will be presenting tonight. And this time it is a natural wine. So a natural wine, this is something that I've heard since only last year. So could you tell us a little bit about what the natural wine is?
So natural wines, it's becoming very popular in the Philippines, especially for the past 2 or 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
This is your glass.
Thank you very much.
So what makes it different, I'd say, is really more in the wine making process. You have the regular wines, right?
Mm-hmm.
Again, natural wines is more of a concept than an actual winemaking process or a certified winemaking process.
Okay.
It really is more of a concept. There are, I wouldn't say there are no rules, but what winemakers tend to do is they want to make sure that they get to express what their vineyards can actually offer. So there's minimal human intervention as possible during the winemaking process.
How does that work
They
exactly?
basically, with winemaking, it goes through a whole process, right?
Yes.
You pick the grapes during harvest season, you
Mm-hmm.
bring it to the winery, you start pressing the grapes, you get the juice, you ferment by adding yeast to the
Yeah.
wines as well. With natural winemakers, they number one, they use organic grapes. They make sure
Okay.
that their vineyards are fully organic.
Okay.
No pesticides, no fertilizers, any chemicals that can be absorbed by the grapes during the grape growing process.
Mm-hmm.
So it's normally all organic.
Okay.
They bring the grapes to the winery, they crush and press the juice, they add yeast, but most natural winemakers, they don't add yeast because wines or
Okay.
grapes naturally carry yeast. So they
Oh.
basically just leave the grape juice, let it ferment on its own, maybe adjust a few things, but not really.
Mm-hmm.
Some winemakers or traditional winemakers would add sulfites. Natural winemakers don't.
Mm.
They bottle it up. Some are unfiltered and unfined, which is what we have today as
Okay.
well that we're tasting. And that's it. They turn it into wine. That's it. There's really not a lot of process
I
done for it.
see. Okay. So since grape has some yeast and they don't use yeast, does that mean that the fermentation process takes longer?
It's about the same period as
Oh,
well.
okay.
The only challenging part is the control of like alcohol percentage, sugar content. I think
Okay.
that's one of the challenges that they would go through. But the thing is, they really just this is the ancient method of winemaking process. This
Yeah.
is how everything started.
Right. Right.
So a lot of natural winemakers they want to pay homage to that.
Mm.
Now the thing also is with wines or the traditional wine world, there's so many laws and rules that they have to follow. For every winemaking region, they have to follow like a certain aging process.
Yeah.
They have to follow grape varieties that they can only grow in that certain area,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
which is a good way of making sure that the quality is at par. For natural winemakers, they don't really follow those laws and
Mm-hmm.
regulations in that certain region. So they tend to just make wine out of their own personal interests and personal palates as well.
I see.
So it's very free, I'd
Yeah.
say. That's why a lot of winemakers tend to make their labels a bit like, fun and artistic
Ah,
and
I
free
see.
also, which is what we love. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. That's interesting. And so this like does the traditional winemakers now the one who would go through like the step by step process and they have strict guidelines and stuff. Would they see this as kind of like a disruptor in that industry?
I would say so because natural wines have been making a lot of noise in the F&B scene,
Mhm.
especially for the past few years. Even in Manila right now, a lot of restaurants tend to go for natural wines,
Oh,
which
okay.
I think the reason why they go for is because it's food friendly.
Ah.
It's very easy. Its approach is very easy. It's not
Uh-huh.
very complicated.
Okay.
And so it's easy for a lot of people, especially those who are not really into wine. It's a good starter for everyone also. It's something that everybody will
Mm.
appreciate.
Okay. All right. Well, without further ado, so we are about to try the natural one. This is a natural white
White
wine.
wine, yes.
Okay. And this looks unfiltered? Yes,
Yes.
100%.
So there are beverages or there's a certain category called the orange wines.
Okay.
They're not necessarily made from oranges,
Okay.
but they are usually fermented with the skin, which gives it
Oh.
some depth and color.
Okay.
This
Okay.
one was not fermented with the skin, so
Mm-hmm.
it's just hazy because it was unfined and unfiltered.
Okay.
This is how grape juice, once fermented, actually looks like. So it's basically
Ah.
just getting it on how it's supposed to look or smell like also.
Yeah. Okay.
So that's how it is. So that's the whole concept of natural winemaking. They want it as honest as possible.
Honest winemaking. I did not know that existed
Yeah.
until natural wines. All this time, you know what? I thought natural wines were kind of just like like fruit. Fruit wines, I think. But then how okay, before we get to that question, do we swirl or no?
Absolutely.
Oh,
Just
you
go
can
through the
swirl.
whole process like a natural I'm sorry, like the usual wines that you get. You look at
Yeah.
the color, you swirl your glass, you smell your wine, which you'll notice it's a bit different from your other white wines that you've had.
Yeah, I'm trying to pinpoint the what is it? It's kind of like I don't know if I'm wrong, but it's like it's kind of a little metallic in some way. I don't.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if that's
Yeah, so it's got that it's not really sulfur, but it's almost like that earthy note to it that makes it metallic.
mm,
Um in terms of fruits, I do get a lot of like that tangerine notes, some citrus as well, like
there's
lime or
some peach.
lemon.
Yeah.
Um Lots of apricots as well, some
That.
pears.
Yeah. 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 I smell
It's
the
it's
apricot.
almost like blood orange also. It gives you a lot of notes, but very easy.
From the smell itself, I'm like I feel like this wine's gonna taste good.
Yeah.
Like sometimes because that's what I get sometimes when I'm about to drink wine. It's like once you do the whole process of like the whole smelling and swirling, or swirling then smelling, like you're like anticipating. Like I feel like it's gonna be a good
Exactly.
tasting wine. But anyway, okay, so here we go. We're tasting it. It's very clean and easy.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Very juicy, very citrusy, lots of fruits to it, some
yeah.
pineapple, some oranges, but very very clean, diba? Like easy to drink. That's it. I mean, it's
Yeah.
very food friendly as well. Imagine if we pair this with a few dishes.
Yeah, it's not
Um,
overwhelming to the palate.
exactly.
I love it.
Alcohol is present, which is what we love also about
So
it.
para
Not that
siyang
we're
juice, para siyang cocktail in some way,
yeah.
but it's wine.
Yes, exactly.
So the alcohol content you mentioned, is it lower or higher?
I'd say it's about the same.
About the same pa
Yeah,
rin.
wines
Okay.
naman would normally range between 10% to 15%. Some
Yeah.
would go lower.
Mm-hmm.
This is about 13% alcohol, which
Wow.
is very nice. This, by the way, is it's called Verdejo. That's a grape.
Verdejo. Okay.
It's from, I believe it's from Castilla y Leon in
In
Spain.
Spain, yeah.
Very big region, known for different grape varieties, but Verdejo is one of their grape varieties that they're known for.
Mm-hmm.
It's from a natural winemaker, very, very small producer, very young as well.
Okay. Okay.
And so he just wanted to really highlight the grape varieties that he has in his area.
That's awesome.
So
This yeah, it smells really nice. There's a really great aroma coming off this natural wine. So give it a shot, monsters, if you ever come across natural wine. The natural red wines, is that like is it less overwhelming also as compared to the traditional reds?
I'd say so, yeah. It has a very easy approach. A lot of natural red wines would have a very juicy characteristic,
Okay.
lots
Okay.
of berries.
Okay.
Unlike traditional wines that would have a lot of chocolates and vanilla and like wood or leather or oaky notes,
Okay,
some
notes.
cigar
Yeah.
notes, you wouldn't really see that in natural wines. A lot of
Yeah.
natural red wines would go for just fruits,
Mm,
which is what we love also.
that's true. So where do they age these natural wines or how does it
Most
go?
of them do not.
Okay.
The thing is, they are normally low in sulfites, which is a natural preservative
Preservative.
in wine.
Okay. Yeah.
So that's what a lot of natural winemakers tend to steer
Mm-hmm.
away from also. They
Right.
don't add sulfites to their wine,
Okay.
which is a lot of people actually look for wines that are low in sulfur dioxide or in sulfites.
Yeah. Yeah. So this one. So when it comes to natural wines, what would be the shelf life of this?
I'd say drink it within 2 to 3 years. That's
Okay.
really just the best time.
So may oras pa naman.
Yes, it's something that I wouldn't really age.
Okay.
I drink it right away. I think that's one of the good things about natural wines.
Yeah.
They're really meant to be drunk young.
Mm. As compared to like the traditional wines, which is
Yes,
like, oh, if it's aged, it's like
better.
75
Yeah,
years old and
correct.
stuff. Yeah.
So it doesn't really apply to all wines.
Yeah, I love that. Okay, learning today, tonight, actually, here on the Monster. And so we have a few questions left, but this is going to be like a rapid fire
Oh
round
yeah,
naman.
here we go.
Yeah, so I want to know because in the past guestings that you've had here, you would talk about Filipino food. This time, I want to change it up and know how it's like to pair wine or like what wines to pair with some Filipino snacks because we're very snackish people. At least for me. That maybe I'm just talking about myself. But anyway, so let's get it started. I have 10 kinds of snacks here. So first one, chicharon.
Ooh. So I'll go for the region or grape variety for the wine
You
pairing.
do
I
you, Master
won't
Sommelier,
go.
future Master Sommelier.
I won't go for anything specific like producers, but
Yeah.
chicharon, I'll definitely go for a champagne for that. Any
So
bottle of champagne. I
strong.
mean, it's quite expensive, but I mean, imagine drinking a nice
Yeah.
bottle of champagne with chicharon. I think
It's like
living the best
mixing.
life, diba?
Yeah, it's like a balance of like bougie and
Eat
medyo
street.
street food. Yeah, in some way. So pulutan. There we
Yeah,
go.
exactly.
I love that. And once again, monsters. Champagne is not the same as sparkling wine.
Yes.
Champagne comes from the Champagne region of France. Just letting you guys know.
Yeah.
Okay, next, we have these beer nuts or like yung garlic nuts, which I absolutely love.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh! So what pairs well with that one?
I mean, for beer alone is really good with it. I
Of
mean, I'd
course,
pair it
yeah.
with an IPA from any country,
Okay.
Indian Pale Ale, something bitter but very aromatic.
Mm-hmm.
A bit nutty and floral at the same time. Beer would be good with it, but for wines, I think it will go really well with an unoaked Chardonnay. Something
Okay.
full-bodied, something savory, something creamy with that nutty notes also. So
Nutty
unoaked
Chardonnay.
Chardonnay, nothing with oak.
Okay. So like they weren't aged in
In
oak.
oak, correct.
Okay. So would that be like the steel vats
Yes,
instead?
correct. Yeah, see?
I can be the I'm doing way too much. All right. Let's go for the third one. Fish crackers.
Ooh, interesting. You know what? If you dip that in vinegar, I will pair that with a Sauvignon Blanc.
Yeah, you have to. You have to dip it kasi in vinegar.
So
Sauvignon Blanc.
Sauvignon
Okay.
Blanc is known for its high acid component,
Mm-hmm.
so good with a vinegar also, something
Okay.
fish and something light.
All right.
So
Okay. Cool. Fish crackers, but dip it in vinegar. Highly recommended. Popcorn.
ooh. Oh, this is when you'll go for oak Chardonnay, for something from Napa Valley of
Mm-hmm.
some sort, or something aged in oak barrels,
Mm-hmm.
something buttery and
Yeah.
popcorn and notes also for
Yeah.
Chardonnay. Anything from Napa will definitely be
I was
good with
actually
popcorn.
I was actually like the first thing that came to mind when you said Chardonnay and for the popcorn. I was wondering if it was because of the butteriness
Yes.
of the
So
Chardonnay.
it acts like a condiment to your popcorn
Yeah,
na rin.
exactly. That's amazing. Okay. Oh, and also, I think off air you mentioned that sparkling sake goes also with popcorn.
Absolutely. Popcorn or the thing is with sake, it can pair well with almost
And
anything.
okay.
That's what I love
Yeah,
about
okay.
it.
You mentioned this earlier. Nga. Okay,
Yeah.
noted. Next we have potato chips, just regular salted
Ooh.
ones.
You know what? I'll go for a nice Chenin Blanc. Let's
Okay.
say from either Loire Valley or South Africa. Something
Oh,
easy,
interesting.
clean, potato chips, champagne or sparkling wine would still
Yeah.
go well with it. So,
Mm-hmm. I have a special question naman. What if the flavor is, and I'm not gonna name the brand, sour cream and cheddar?
ooh, bit as high in acid, something creamy also. I'll probably go with a nice Loire Valley Sauvignon Blanc also, something high in acid but a bit creamy on the
Okay.
texture. Puy Fumé, that's one of like the
Mm-hmm.
small regions in Loire Valley. One of the best regions for Sauvignon Blanc also.
Okay.
I'll definitely go for any Sauvignon Blanc from that region.
All right. I'm just bougieing up your snack time monsters. That's
Yeah.
all. Okay. Now we are heading into the sweet snacks in just a bit, but first we've got shrimp crackers. You know the one you fry?
Oh, interesting. Yes, of
Yeah.
course.
Oh, gutom na ako. Anyway.
You know what? A dry Riesling, I think will go well
A
with it.
Riesling.
Yeah, dry
Wow.
one.
Okay.
Nothing sweet, high in acid also. We're going for mostly white wines actually.
Yeah, yeah,
But
yeah.
with shrimp crackers, I'll definitely go for a nice dry Riesling. Or maybe a sparkling wine from Loire Valley. There's one small region called Somor.
Mm-hmm.
They produce a lot of Chenin Blancs and sparkling Chenin Blancs, which I
Okay.
think is perfect for this dish
I
also.
love
So a
that.
few options.
Shrimp crackers. Crackers. I love. Okay. Next, let's do lengua de gato.
Ooh, creamy and a bit sweet. Quite interesting, Quite challenging also. We can go for a nice off-dry Riesling.
Off. What's off
Off-dry. So
dry?
uh it's not dry. It has a tinge of sweetness to it, but nothing sweet. You get it?
Ah.
It's somewhere between. It's like drinking water with a bit of sugar in it lang. It's that
Oh, okay.
sensation, but with lots of fruit
Okay.
components and creamy notes. So I think that would be
So it's like an
interesting.
easy kind of
Yeah.
Riesling. Because I know
Yes.
Riesling, at least how I remember it, it was a little overwhelming in I think the dryness of it. Like,
Yes.
what's kind of. All right, Lengua de Gato, an off dry Riesling.
Yeah.
What about. I feel like this is going to be similar, Barquillos.
Yeah, I'd say the same.
Same. Okay.
Although I am thinking of another wine, also from France, but
Mm-hmm.
then there's one from Loire Valley, but demi-sec.
Okay.
Demi-sec Sauvignon Blanc, which means semi-dry.
Okay.
So it's a bit somewhere there, like off-dry Riesling. This is semi-dry Riesling.
Yeah.
It's just
Yeah.
different ways of calling it, but they have that tinge of sweetness to them and creaminess
Oh.
also.
Okay. All right. And then we have banana chips.
Ooh, interesting. This is definitely on the sweeter side. You have
Mm.
that good coating of sugar outside.
Yes.
It's
Yes.
crunchy also. I'll probably go for something sweet, like something from Tokai in Hungary.
I know that. I know that
I'm
one.
sure
It's
you've it's
sweet.
that one is sweet.
That's a sweet wine.
It's almost like syrupy. It's almost like
Yes.
honey, some dried apricots, very
Yeah.
fruity as well, but a bit on the sweeter side.
Okay.
Tokai from Hungary. Interesting. Made from ferment grapes. That's what it's called.
Oh.
Very, very sweet wine.
Okay. And then finally, do you know like those sweet corn? Not the brand mismo, but there's some
Mm.
sweet corn pops like you
Yes.
get from a tub,
Yeah.
which I should not put that in front of me.
Ooh. I think that's one of the best examples for something sweet and salty. So it's quite challenging. Something crunchy also.
Mm-hmm.
I'll go back to excuse me. I'll go back to sparkling on that one.
Okay, sparkling wine.
But maybe not from champagne.
Mm.
Something a bit off dry also.
Okay. All right. Okay. And so you mentioned earlier about most of the wines that you're suggesting here also were white. So is there anything you can think of top of mind probably that would go with a red?
Ooh.
A snack that could go with a red.
You know what? I think nuts with red wines from Italy. I think they will go
Okay.
well. Some red wines from Italy, especially those from like warmer areas, tend to have a bit of nutty and earthy notes.
All right.
So anything from Italy, actually, yeah, I
All
think that will
right.
go well
Awesome.
with nuts,
Okay. I
roasted
just
nuts.
I just have one more
Yeah,
suggestion.
go
This
ahead.
was not in my list, but then when I was talking about banana chips, I was like, "Oh my god, why didn't I put turon
Oh
in here?"
yeah. Ooh,
Because you
like
got
with
the
ice
caramel.
cream.
You, your imagination, wherever it will take you, Ian, is up to you.
Like the mangtuts kind of
Well, yeah. I mean, it can just be the if
right?
it okay. You can do the two
Turon.
options. Just the
Sige.
turon with like the let's make it the premium turon with the
Yeah.
durian inside also,
Ooh.
and with the
Oh
caramelized.
yeah.
Oh,
Oh, that sounds good. Okay, let's do plain Turon.
okay.
I'll go for a nice Riesling from Germany, maybe
Mm-hmm.
from Moselle, like a beer in Auslese kind. So it's a classification of the sweetness level.
Okay.
So you have five, six different levels for sweetness in Germany.
Okay.
Beer in Auslese is one of the sweetest kind of
Okay.
Riesling.
Okay.
I think that will go really well with like a simple
Yum.
sugar coated Turon. But something premium, maybe. I mean, I'd consider Mangtuts like a premium kind
Mm-hmm.
of turon, like some cinnamon outside,
Yeah. Yeah.
something interesting. Sauterne, I think, will go well with it.
Okay.
Sauterne is in south of Bordeaux.
Okay.
They produce a lot of sweet wines, also similar to a Tokai from Hungary.
Mm-hmm.
Usually made with Semillon and Sauvignon Blanc grapes.
Okay.
Very, very sweet, high in acid, very aromatic. Lots of fruit components, but a lot of earthy components to it and nutty components. Some honey flavors to it.
Yum.
That will go well with a premium kind of turon. Maybe even add some ice cream to that. I think
Right. Oh
everything
my
will go well together.
gosh. I love it. Okay. All right. So that was a really educational rapid fire. I hope you monsters were taking notes because oh my god, like just remember Riesling, Tokai, and ano pa, Sauvignon Blanc, Chenin Blanc. And I hope you guys paired it with the snacks that we mentioned also earlier. Well, okay. So it is nearing the end of the show, but also I would just like to ask a few or maybe just like one more question as well. Um are there any other are there trends right now in the wine world that would maybe impact like what choices there are in the restaurant industry or like the choices that just consumers have in general when it comes to wines?
Interesting. I'm not exactly sure if this is a trend, but
Mm-hmm.
having sommeliers in a restaurant setup is becoming a thing in the Philippines now. A lot of restaurants have been really assigning or hiring sommeliers to really just work on the beverages alone
Mm-hmm.
and help recommend wines in the on the floor. That's really a big help for the industry, especially like our country that is not very familiar with wines.
Mm.
It really helps out a lot of customers who dine and try to experience just a good type of dish
Yeah,
and beverages in a restaurant setup.
that's amazing.
Lots of pop-ups also, like from different wine importers, has been
Yes,
happening. A lot of interesting pairings. Lots of wine bars opening up in Manila right
that's
now.
right. Yeah,
Um,
I've noticed.
like even if you go to some malls nowadays, they do have pop-ups like this wine from Supernatural Wines. They have
Mm-hmm.
a pop-up in a mall, diba?
Mm-hmm.
Um, you have a lot of things happening around. So
Mm-mm.
it's been growing. We've been getting a lot of help from different countries as well in
Yeah.
terms of importing, making a broader selection for wine. So definitely a lot of options for
Yeah.
everyone.
I love that. And I think for all of you monsters who are interested in wanting to join like wine events, here's how I actually keep my ears on the ground in that sense. And all I did was, and this is a shameless plug, I follow Ian. In case you guys didn't know, I follow Ian, but then he also posts on his stories like the different wine tastings that he goes to. But it's not necessarily the wine tastings that I look at. It's the importers, the names, the Instagram that they have, and then I follow them because they're the ones who post like their wine tasting events.
That's true.
So I'm just like, that's how I know like where there are these things going on. And so if you guys are want to be interested in wines, like that's one of the ways that I attended one that was hosted by Ian, and you learn so much. You drank a lot too, but it's beside the point. But then you learn so much because there was pairing of like cheeses and cold cuts and everything, and it just was so educational and fun to be in the same like in this long table with everyone
Mhm.
who was just like interested in wanting to know how these wine
Mhm.
pairings worked. So there you go. That's my suggestion for you guys if you're ever interested in wanting to learn more about wines. You attend those tasting events. So there we go. That is the show. That's heard on Thursdays. This almost midpoint of the year. So now you get to choose whatever wine you want to celebrate with when it comes to I think it's July 2. That's the midpoint of the year. And also, if you want monsters to like follow you, I guess, or if there's anything that you want to push as well, um, go ahead. Now's your time.
Yeah. So yeah, first we have this super wine from Supernatural Wines. They have a pop up in Rockwell right now.
Mm,
Um, do follow them, explore their wines. I think they have one of the best selections for natural wines as
for
well in the
natural wines.
Philippines.
Okay.
There's a few right now who are really trying to expand the wine selection in Manila. So you can check them out. You have Cellar Solutions as well for an amazing sake selection.
Mm-hmm.
You'll see me working around in a few events. Follow me on Instagram. It's Odilio. It's Odeelyo.
Yeah.
You learn so much about wines. You'll see posts mostly on my wine journey, but you'll definitely learn a lot. You have events happening around, and I'll definitely share that with everyone. So
Yeah.
thank you.
Again, that's how you get in the know with all of these events, and it's fun. I've yet to attend like a big one. The basta.
Yes.
Yeah. You just check his stories.
Yes.
But that is the show, monsters. Thank you very much for staying up late and listening and watching us live on YouTube, Facebook, and on Twitch as well, and listening live on radio. We very much appreciate it. So catch us again on our next Heard on Thursdays. For now, though, of course, keep it locked only here on the Monster. Bye bye.